Hi everyone, my name is Carter. I'm one of the junior Extemp officers at Anderson, and today I'm going to be talking to you about what is an intro to an Extemp speech. So let me share my screen. Okay, I've never done this before, so hopefully this doesn't go bad. Okay, so what even is an intro? Before we begin, basically an intro is exactly what it sounds like. It's the introduction to your Extemp speech. So usually it's about a minute to a minute 30. We try to make sure it's to a minute 30 when we're giving them, but obviously we'll work with you when you are starting out. So these are the 7 parts of an introduction. So think of this almost as like a formula or a guideline on how to structure it to get it to that 1 minute and 30-second mark. So the first thing we do um, is obviously the AGD, and then you'll do your link, your background, your significant statement, question, answer, and then your 3 tags or points. So I know this looks really confusing, but once I explain it, hopefully it won't. So the first thing in our formula is an attention-grabbing device, or AGD. So an attention-grabbing device is essentially the hook to your paper. So if you think of your speech as like a research paper for school, it's just the hook, and it's trying to grab your judge's attention. A general rule of thumb is that it should be kept short, so 1 to 2 sentences at a maximum, because if you just start babbling about your hook, judge will not be as engaged. Some things that you could use for HD or attention grabbing device are jokes, puns, or funny like political jokes are really good. So puns obviously are self-explanatory. Just anything you can like make a joke about. So for like that relates to your speech. Make sure it actually relates to your speech, because like however funny your joke may be, if it's not like appropriate to say in an extemp round, then it's not gonna do you any favors. Some other things you can do later on is a narrative. So this is kind of more like technical, and I don't usually do it just because it takes more like time to figure out. Is an account or story of something that like took place in relation to your topic. So that could be like someone's account of what happened. Something like if you're talking about like the protests that are going on, it could be an account of the protester or something like that, and something that can transition you into the background or more information. Another thing is statistic. So like money, deaths, people. We usually say people, power, money are like the 3 big things you want to focus on, because like that's what matters in capitalist America. So statistics, specifically like really big numbers. So if you're talking about like debt or like something with the economy, like a number is really good, or something where like a lot of people died or something like that. And then what I usually try to do is like an anecdote, which is just a short story, something that will like get the reader's attention, and it's like kind of like a joke, so it's funny, but it's also like a mix of a narrative, but it's not as like complex. So this is how you need to like not make the judge dislike you with your AGD. So we always say punch up, not down. And what I mean by that is it's fine to like, make fun or make jokes of people with power, meaning like you punch up against like people that are like oppressing or something like that. But you never want to punch down, meaning if they're like someone that's like oppressed or someone who like is not in power, you don't want to like make fun of them, because like that's not funny. So always punch up and not down. Um, Something about jokes, anything of like a sexual, racial, religious, or cultural nature, something that's like not appropriate, don't say, because chances are you're gonna offend your judge, and the judge is just gonna like remember you for saying something that you shouldn't have. And then anything like above a PG-13 level, usually don't say, because the judge will like, just be uncomfortable. Because most times on like the local circuits, especially for novice extemp, it's gonna be like a parent. And if you make something like inappropriate, they're just gonna like not rank you high. Quotes from non-credible sources. We'll talk about like what a credible source is, but like don't just cite fake news basically. And like even though it fits with what you're trying to say, don't do that. Made up stories. One time I like tried to do something and I cited like a Netflix show as a narrative. It was like just a practice speech, but something like that. If you were just gonna go and like cite something fake, also a bad idea. And then characterizations. So don't like make assumptions about people. One time I watched a round where someone like pretended to be Vladimir Putin, also not a good idea. So just steer clear of that. Okay, the link. So if we go back to here, we are now at our AGD link background. So the link is exactly what it sounds like. It's linking you from your attention grabbing device into the background. So we're going to go from your AGD. Now we're at the link, and the link's going to connect us to our background. Okay, I'm just going to erase that. Cool. Okay, so your link is super short. It's just going to be about a sentence long. It's just going to get you to transition more naturally from your hook to your background of your speech. So, like this example, if our AGD was a statistic that says 200,000 Americans have died because of COVID-19, you're going to want to transition from that statistic into your background information. So you could say something like, this is because of a lack of social distancing measures, or something that like connects and like weaves what you're saying together so the judge can be like, okay, I understand what they're saying. So don't overthink it. It's really simple. It's just a sentence that connects your hook to your background. Okay, but what is a background? Good question. A background is what you're going to explain your topic to the judge. So a rule of thumb is when you're doing Extemp, pretend that your judge knows absolutely nothing, or that like they just don't know what you're talking about and you need to inform them. Because a big piece of Extemp is to answer the question, and you can't answer the question if the judge doesn't know what your question is about. So how do you do that? You need to explain the topic to the judge. So self-explanatory, you're going to want to find information from at least two sources about your topic and basically just explain what your topic is and what it means. Um, so you're just going to want to think about teaching the judge about your topic. So right here, you're like basically a teacher, and you're going to just explain what like the problem is and what it is. And if you don't know it, the judge definitely doesn't know anything about it, so you're gonna want to like really break it down. And what I do is I try to make my background like as simple as possible. So like just because you are like an expert in like the South China Sea or Africa or like America economics situation, your judge probably is not, and your judge might even not know what Extemp is, perhaps. So like you want to break it down. So you don't need to be super like eloquent and complex, and like your background, like simple and straightforward is like how I do it, and I think the best way. So some ways to structure your background could be like, what is the problem that is prompting your question, and then what caused this. So you're going to want to give some context to like why you're like what you're talking about and how it happened. Some other things similarly, you could talk about like the status quo or what happened in the past and what changed and now like how it's different in the present and why that prompted your question. And then another thing, like this is the status quo and this is the impacts, and the impacts are why this question is being asked. So you're basically just providing context and like showing your judge like this is why this is relevant and this is why I'm like giving a speech about this. Okay. So now we're at our significance statement. So this is right before we get to our question, and this is really to convince the judge, like, why does this matter, and why should I listen to this random high schooler ramble about world issues for the next 7 minutes? So you're gonna wanna give your speech significance. So some things you can talk about are probability, like, will this happen? Like, is this likely to happen? Is this like actually relevant to the world around me? Time frame, when will it happen? Magnitude, like how much will this be affecting me? And then scope, who will be affected? So these are just like pretty words to put on a slide: probability, time frame, magnitude, scope. But really, you're just going to want to think about like why does this matter, and why should the judge care? So you don't need to remember like all these pretty words. That's just like to show you what it could be. Just remember like why does it matter and why should the judge care? I think that's what your SIG statement should be. And then think people, power, money. Again, like these are the three things that will get people's attention. So be like, it's because like if I don't do this, the probability is in like however many whatever that this many people are gonna die, or like the probability of like this person getting power, or I don't really know about money, but like if it's economics, it could be money. But you don't need to focus on these. It's really just making your judge care about what you're going to talk about. And again, it's giving your question importance. So the judge is like, okay, like this kid is talking about something really important, and like they're going to win the round because like their speech made sense. Okay, so question. Just a refresher where we are. We just went through all of these parts of an intro, and now we're going to ask our question. So this is the most important part of your speech, arguably, is because if you don't know what, if the judge doesn't know what your question is, you're just gonna lose because they don't know what you're talking about. So some general rule of thumbs. You should always remember your question. Um, if all else fails, at least you can ask your question because that's like 50% of extent is just asking your question. So some keynotes on your question is you want to ask it slowly and you want to read it correctly. So even if the question like has grammatical errors or spelling errors, you're just going to want to read it. So if like grammatically it's incorrect, like that's just how life is and you're just going to have to roll with it. But read it slow, pronunciate and read it correctly so the judge is like, okay, because you're also going to have to give your judge the question so the judge will know what your question is. So if it differs because like you think it sounds better, then the judge is going to be like confused. So that transitions me into don'ts with your question. Don't change the question. Literally just read it word for word, even if it sounds like a toddler wrote it. And trust me, sometimes you'll get questions that just sound confusing and you're just going to have to figure it out. But don't change the question. Don't forget the question and don't fail to answer the question. Basically, just remember your question. So, how do you answer the question? Oh, I have a slide. Look at me. Okay. How do you answer the question? Here are how there's two types of questions, okay? There's going to be your yes or no questions, and there's going to be your open ended questions. So, right now, just focus on yes or no. I don't know what this does. Can I do this? No. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm missing the same. Okay, just don't look at this. Just cross it out. Usually when I'm presenting this in person, I'll just cross it off the screen, but obviously that's not an option right now. So let me just, okay, just focus on the other one for now and we'll come back to this. Okay, so yes or no questions. It's obviously going to be answered with a yes or no. So an example is going to be, this is for an exam, is China winning its propaganda battle over the coronavirus? So this can be answered with a yes or a no. So you're going to want to say yes, and then give an umbrella answer. And a lot of people get really tripped up, especially when you're learning this, and probably even now because I'm teaching this to you over a weird Zoom call, is like, what even is an umbrella answer? Basically what it is the argument that all your points support. And as a novice, it's not that important that you have an umbrella answer, but as you like grow and develop into a stronger extemper, you're gonna want to have one. So basically, this is like an umbrella right here, down here. And then after you give your umbrella answer, sorry, that wasn't very clear, but I'm gonna explain it, just like, stay with me. You're gonna wanna give 3 points that support your umbrella answer. These points can also be called tags. So if you hear someone being like, what are your tags? They're just saying like, what are your points, basically. I know it's confusing, but we'll explain it more like in person. So just like jot these questions down if you have any and we'll answer them. So 3 parts to answering the question. Say either yes or no. So yes, and then you're gonna wanna give an umbrella answer because, and then umbrella answer, they have successfully shifted the blame onto the West by, and then here comes your 3 points, by first, second, and third. So this way, the judge has like a clear understanding of what you're arguing, and then if they're like, okay, but like, I don't understand, then you're gonna be like, here's literally 3 reasons why I'm right and why I'm like the best speaker here. So yes or no, umbrella answer, and then 3 points. And we'll do lots of practice and like walk y'all through this before your first tournament. So like right now, like it's supposed to not make sense, but eventually it will. But this is just like to get the ball rolling, if that makes sense. Okay, now let me cross this out because we don't want to look at this one. That was yes or no. So there's 2 different types of questions that you can encounter as an extemper. The first one is yes or no. The second one are these open-ended questions, which also tend to trip up freshmen or first years because they're like, I don't know, this doesn't fit into my formula. And my first year, I got an open-ended question. I had literally no idea how to answer it, and I didn't do well. But that's not going to be used in teaching you. So open-ended questions usually start with how can, or like how should, or anything that's not answered with a yes or no, so open-ended. And how you want to answer that is you're going to want to give again, an umbrella answer, and then give 3 points. So basically the same as yes or no, just without the yes or no. So it seems like rather simple, but I don't know why that seems so confusing for me, but hopefully it's not for you. So if you got this question, how can Nigeria wipe out Boko Haram? You could give your umbrella answer, that is by providing its citizens with sufficient protection by, or or for example, first they could blah, blah, blah. Second, they could blah, blah, blah. And third, blah, blah, blah. So same thing, you're gonna wanna say what you're arguing and then 3 different points that support your argument. Okay, keep going. Okay, so preview. This is also like confusing, I guess. I don't know why, but people just get tripped up with like preview. I think it's just like the fancy words. But basically, this is this chunk of your speech right here. So when we say preview, it's because you're outlining what you're going to talk about. So you're saying like, this is the question I'm answering, and this is my answer to it, and like this is what my speech is going to be. So another word for this is, can I type on screen? It's called uniform analysis, which is like, whoa, really big word. What does that mean? It's basically saying like, I'm going to follow this structure, meaning like, I'm going to say like, this is my first point, and I'm talking about your intro here. So like, I'm gonna say this point is first, then this point is second, and this point is third. So when I'm going into my full speech, I'm gonna follow the same order of first, second, third, the same way of what I did in my intro, which I'm sure this was a terrible way of explaining it, but hopefully it'll make sense. But basically, you're just gonna wanna keep everything in your intro in order. So let me go back to the slide. Okay, preview. So these are about the points that you're going to say. So you're going to want to keep your points short. Again, preview is like your 3 points. You're previewing what you're talking about later on in the speech. So you're going to want to keep these short. They should be like less than a sentence, like a few words about what you're going to talk about. And this is going to support your umbrella answer to the question. So like back here, like these first, second, thirds right here, like they give 3 points to support. I'm so sorry, I don't know how to work Zoom. Okay, again, your preview is these first, second, thirds. So like you're previewing, first I'm gonna talk about, second I'm gonna talk about, and third I'm gonna talk about. Same thing. I'm previewing first, second, third, and like these are my 3 points. Okay, I hope I'm not talking too fast. You might have to put me on like slow speed on YouTube or whatever, but oh well. I'll explain it in camp. Okay, so again, you're gonna want to keep these points really short. You don't want to like, a sentence is way too long because the judge is gonna be like trying to remember like what you're talking about, and they're gonna be like just gonna have like a whole paragraph in your head if you keep them too long. So keep them short, a few words, like 5 words max, like less than that. And then you're gonna want to order them in what we call the point sandwich. So when you come up with points, like inherently one is gonna be bad because you're just trying to reach 3 points to talk about, and you're just gonna like scribble something down and just roll with it. So the way to like disguise that you are struggling is to do the point sandwich. So you're gonna want to put your second best point, your worst point, and your best point. And what I mean by that is like on your flow pad, like you'll write down somewhere like, my points are, this is like just a joke speech, but like first one is because TikTok is good. Second one is because Taylor Swift is amazing. And then the last one is Kanye will win, will beat. Okay, so if like my second best point in those are that TikTok is good, that will be my first one. And then if my worst point is that Kanye will beat Biden, that'll be my second point. And then if my best point is that Taylor Swift is amazing, it'll be my third point, if that makes sense. And the reason for this is because when your judge is listening to your speech, remember that there's also like 6 other kids speaking, and that they're gonna like be sitting there for an hour listening to all these speeches. So chances are when they get to like the second point, they're kind of just gonna zone out. Like just take this from my experience, like you definitely zone out with Extemp speeches. So the point where the judges in the audience are definitely like paying the least amount of attention is your second point. So if you put in like your worst point, like that Kanye will beat Biden, that is the point they're going to pay the least amount of attention in. So if it's bad or like doesn't make sense, they'll like probably not pay that much attention to it. So like order your points by second best, worst, and then best point. If that makes sense. And then the goal again is to convince your judge like I'm right. Like this, there's 3 different reasons why I'm right. So like I should win. And then you're gonna want to make sure that the points relate to the question. So even if the points you say like make sense, like take like TikTok is good, like makes sense. But if I'm answering like a question about Africa, that doesn't make sense. So even though it's true, it's like, why are you talking about this? And a lot of times, like with novice exam speeches, they tend to just even varsity, like people will just talk about things that like, yeah, it's true, but why are you talking about that? Like that has nothing to do with your speech. So make sure that it actually like, relates to the question, because again, your goal is to answer the question. So this might be the last slide. No, okay, cool. Just kidding. So this is an example. I'm just gonna like take a breath so you can just synthesize all this information, like click pause and scream at me for being confusing. So just, okay. This is an example of what an intro could look like. I don't know when I wrote this, but oh, I wrote this like a month ago. Okay, cool. So here's the AGD we talked about. This is like an anecdote, kind of, or like a joke, just all rolled into one. So I'm gonna start with like the United States never loses, even in global. And this is like satire, if that makes sense, because like undefeated in world wars, etc. The U.S. always takes first place. With over 3 million confirmed cases, the United States has 35 times more cases than even the origin of the coronavirus, China. And then your link. So like you'll hear, I'll put this all together at the end, and it won't be a minute and a half because I like don't have enough information on the screen. But you'll hear like the tone shift and like switching from AG to link. So like link. But while this may seem as a complete failure for the United States, it may not be all sunshine, hammers, and sickles as China wants the world to believe. And then sickles is like, it's a communist thing. It's just supposed to be like a joke. And then this is when we're going to transition into our background. So now we're going to like inform the judge like what I'm even talking about. And you're going to do this with 2 sources. So you'll say, according to the New York Times on April 16th, 2020, the CIA has been warning the White House that since at least early February, China has vastly understated its coronavirus infections. The Diplomat on March 25th, 2020 tells us that by shipping medical supplies abroad through their mass diplomacy plan, China is seeking to boost its image as a responsible global leader and deflect blame for starting the coronavirus pandemic. And then you're going to give this, like what I just babbled about, its significance. So while the strength of American hegemony is under siege, it's imperative that we ask the question, and the question, is China winning its propaganda battle over the coronavirus? And the answer is a clear yes, because it has successfully shifted the blame onto the West by first polarizing the majority of voters, and then it'll give your second and your third point. So hopefully that made sense. If not, I'm gonna like put it all together right now, and hopefully it will. But just know like this is your hook, and then you can transition from your hook to your background through the link, and then from the link you'll go to your background and like explain like what you're talking about to the judge, and then after that you'll give your significance, be like this is why that matters, and then you're going to preview what you're talking about. So I'll give like an example of my Extemp voice. I haven't given a speech in like a hot minute, so if it sucks, I'm sorry. I will be better by the time I give a full speech. So you'll be like, the United States never loses. Even in global pandemics, the United States always takes first place. With over 3 million confirmed cases, the United States has 35 times more cases than even the origin of the coronavirus in China. But while this may seem as a complete failure for the United States, it may not be all sunshine, hammers, and sickles as China wants the world to believe. According to the New York Times, on April 16th of 2020, the CIA has been warning the White House that since at least early February, China has been vastly underestimating its coronavirus infections that it reports on a day-to-day basis. In an article published by The Diplomat on March 25th of 2020, it explains that because China is continuing to ship medical supplies abroad in an effort to boost its global image as a responsible international member of the international community, they are trying to deflect blame for starting the coronavirus pandemic. And because of this, we can see that the strength of America's hegemony, I cannot pronounce the word, hegemony, I don't just ignore the word, is under siege, it is imperative that we ask today's question. Is China winning its propaganda battle over the coronavirus? And the answer is a clear yes, because they have successfully shifted the blame onto the West by first polarizing the majority of voters, second, blah, 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 and third, blah, blah, blah. So that's like a really rough and tumble intro. You can see like I was trying to extend it, but I just like, I don't know. It was just bad. So just ignore that. And I promise that I'm better and don't attack me. Okay. So hopefully that like helped like explain what an intro is. And then last thing I want to touch on, this might be the last slide. Yeah, cool. Is the timing of an intro. So as I said before, we want it to be about a minute to a minute 30. So the whole point of this is because like the structure of the speech is like put into categories so that like if you do everything like follow this formula that we're trying to teach you, you'll eventually hit 7 minutes while we like tweak things. And because like an intro is the easiest part of the speech to give, in my opinion, besides the conclusion, like if you can land your intro, especially as a novice, the judge will be like, oh my god, this kid is amazing, and then you can just like crash and burn. But if you do your intro as a novice, that's good. So the first part, like where you're going to get most of your information, is going to be a minute long. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This isn't really important because we're going to teach you this after, but just like food for thought is this part's a minute. And then your question, answer, and your preview or your 3 points are going to be an additional 30 seconds. So at the end of this, you'll be at a minute 30. So just think that's like already a minute and 30 gone, and you haven't even like started like the bulk of your speech. So it's only like what, 5 minutes and 30 seconds left. So it's chill. So this is all I have for this intro PowerPoint. If you have any questions, I'm sure y'all do. This isn't supposed to teach you everything. Jot them down, and then at camp, whenever we learn this, you'll just ask us, and then I'll teach it to y'all, if that makes sense. But yeah, thanks for watching.